Hey, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and I'm here for my monthly series, Shelf Life, where I look back at games I covered about 6 months ago and let you know which ones stayed in my collection. Like usual, I'm going to zip through these and try to keep it short and sweet, and hang on until the end if you want to hear who our winner is of our monthly contest for a free game. But let's get right to it and see which of these games had Shelf Life. First on this month's list is Super Skill Pinball 4K, a 1 to 4 player solo and competitive roll and write with a pinball theme. And yes, indeed, this one is still hanging around. It's a small box game, which makes it pretty easy to keep, but I really love how this one integrated the pinball theme. I think its version of roll and write mechanics is really unique and clever. I love the 4 different boards, and I see they have a new set coming out with even more variety, which I'll probably pick up. Although my 2 biggest caveats to this one still apply. For competitive, you can have one player finish way before others, which can be dull, and it's basically beat your own score, which might not be that exciting for you. Next is our first Kickstarter for this month, Burncycle from Chip Theory Games, focusing on robot stealth action. So nothing to show for this one yet, but Chip Theory Games did say they would send me a copy for future coverage, and I'm really glad they did, because I think the variety in the robots and the kind of puzzle of getting through the floors of these buildings and avoiding the guards, I really enjoy all of that. Now, there were parts I didn't love in the prototype, like the way the network works, but looking at the updates they've been posting, it looks like they're doing pretty amazing development work on this, so like most Chip Theory games, I expect to really enjoy it. Next is another Kickstarter, Elements of the Gods, with solo and competitive play. And this one I didn't go for. It's a pretty abstract game, which already tends to not be my jam usually. I did enjoy the little strategic puzzles in the game, like how to move your meeples and how to manage your cards to get good ending victory points, but there just wasn't anything too exciting for me here, so I decided to pass. Next is Pocket Landship, a 1 to 2 player solo and cooperative game of dice placement. And this is another one hanging around, partially because it's so tiny, but also because it's a really quick and fun dice placement games. I tend to enjoy those. It's not as deep and not as varied as something like One Deck Dungeon, but it's got straightforward mechanics. My son likes playing it co-op with me, and again, it's a tiny box, so why not keep it? Next, we have Thunderbolt Apache Leader, the solo-only game of tactical air warfare. Now this one, while I did find it fun, didn't end up staying in my collection. Honestly, in feel, I felt like the game was a little bit like Field Commander Napoleon, also from DVG Games. But whereas Napoleon has really great variety and a cool new challenge in every scenario, Thunderbolt felt a little samey as I played it more. But we're back to Kickstarter and back to Dan Verson Games with soldiers in Postmen's uniforms designed by David Thompson. And this is another one I'm absolutely going to cover again. Dan Verson Games should be sending me a review copy. But in general, I'm a really big fan of the Valiant Defenders series, including Castle Itter and Pavlov's House. I still think Castle Itter might be my favorite, but Soldiers in Postmen's Uniforms is right behind it. The tension in this one is unbelievable. Definitely a good solo war game to look into once it's out. Next is Paladins of the West Kingdom, a 1 to 4 player solo and competitive worker placement game. Now this one was actually a harder choice than I thought it would be, because when I originally played solo, I really didn't like it. I found the AI so punishing and so kind of restrictive in what you could do that I didn't have much fun. But I eventually came back and played more, got better at the game, learned how to deal with the AI a little bit, and I also got the Tome Saga expansion, which gave other options with the cooperative play. But that being said, I still much prefer Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and Paladins, worker placement in general, are not really my favorite thing, so it had to go. And what I just said probably doesn't bode well for our next game for 1 to 4 players, also solo and competitive, Obsession, another worker placement game. But this one actually is hanging around, primarily because whereas Paladins has kind of no theme that interests me at all, Obsession is dripping with fun theme, especially for those who like kind of that Jane Austen Victorian sensibility. But I'll be honest that part of the reason I'm keeping Obsession is the hope and the waiting game. I still haven't played it with my wife. I've been playing mostly with my son. She's been really busy with her own projects. And also there are rumblings of a cooperative mode coming from the designer, so if that happens, I want to be able to play it, so I think I'll at least hang on to it for a while. Next is Kingdom Rush, a cooperative tower defense game with polyomino placement for 1 to 4 players. And yes, this one is still here. Between Isle of Cats and Kingdom Rush, I've been enjoying polyomino games quite a bit, and this is another one that I play with my son and he really enjoys. Now that being said, I'm not necessarily a huge mega fan of the series, like I didn't go in for the new version on GameFound, although honestly I kind of liked what I saw in that version better than Rift in Time, because I never loved the portal enemies in this one, and I don't think they're in that one, so I might look into it later, maybe even ditch this copy, but for now I'm keeping some version of the game. And finally we have Under Falling Skies, the solo-only dice placement game with one-off and campaign play. And yeah, it's here. Besides maybe Burncycle, this was the easiest choice of this month. Because Under Falling Skies was one of my top solo games from last year, and one of my top games from last year overall. It's just a lot of fun. I really adore the dice placement and how you have to figure out both the actions you want and how far down the enemy ships will come. The campaign's really done. There's tons of variety once you unlock everything. Definitely a big recommend if you can get a copy. So wow, that was 7 games out of 10, which might be a shelf life record. It's certainly the highest that I can remember doing. But thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out next month's episode and hang on right now to find out who won the contest. Alright everybody, before we get to our winner results, let's look at how people voted. So first, Pinball 4K, almost 2/3 of you got it right. Pretty good confidence there. And Burncycle, a straight up exact 2/3. Look at those percentages. Elements of the Gods, I guess almost all of you knew I wasn't really into that one. 84% knowing I didn't go for it. But here with Pocket Landship, we see one of the games that surprised people the most. Only about 20% of you thought I would keep it, even though it's such a tiny box. But back to some confidence, almost 2/3 saying Thunderbolt will be gone. And another surprise, only a bit over 1/3 of you saying I would go for soldiers and postmen's uniforms. And almost 2/3 knew Paladins was out. And look at this, I don't think I've ever seen this before. An exact 50-50 split out of the 84 respondents for Obsession, so that was a close one. But back to some confidence, about 62% knew Kingdom Rush was staying. And the most confident correct keep vote of the month, Under Falling Skies, 75% exactly. And we had a whole bunch of you that got a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, but 2 people got a 9 out of 10. No perfect scores this month. Matt Hurdle and Bryce Vales. So we've got a 1 through 3 for Matt, a 4 through 6 for Bryce. Let's see how the luck turns out. And here comes the roll. A 1. That means Matt Hurdle, you are our winner for this month. I think we had a Matt last month, but a different one. Congrats to Matt. Sorry, Bryce. And thank you everyone who entered the contest. Thanks for watching the video. We'll see you next month with more Shelf Life.